Welcome to the Engage with Oceans podcast. I'm joined by Frode Kielland Asmyhr of the Norwegian Seafood Council and by Michel Roux Jr, Michelin-starred chef and a familiar face on UK television and elsewhere. Welcome to you both. The question we've set ourselves sounds simple, but may well have a more complicated answer. Can we eat fish and still save the oceans? Globally, we eat around 156 million tons of fish each year, and that total is growing. According to the UN, around 2/3 of the catches landed come from sustainable stocks, but 1/3 of fish stocks are deemed overfished and in decline. To the rescue, perhaps, comes aquaculture. More than half of the fish we eat is farmed, and aquaculture is the fastest growing food sector in the world. But I thought we'd begin by dealing with that headline question. Frode, can we eat fish and save the oceans too?
The answer to your question is yes. We can eat fish and also save the oceans, but we need to do this in a sustainable way. And as you said, 2/3 of the stocks are sustainable. And from the Norwegian side, we put a lot into having the world's best managed stocks. So we see the future of our fisheries to be kept in a sustainable way. When it comes to aquaculture, that is where the growth will be, and also that can also be done in a very sustainable way.
Michel, as a consumer rather than a producer of fish, are you happy buying your fish, I suppose, is the best way of putting it? Are you content that the fish that you're buying can be sustained into the future?
Gosh, well, I mean, as a restaurateur, I think we have an obligation and a duty to purchase everything that we serve. And by that, I mean not just fish, but all produce from a sustainable source. I suppose it's more poignant and more maybe at the moment, fish is the hot potato, as it were. So everybody is focusing on fish, and quite rightly so. So yes, it is important for chefs, especially celebrity or media chefs like myself, to be banging the drum of sustainability and where our fish comes from, and I think that is vital. It's key, and our guests demand that now. Our guests are far more knowledgeable than they have ever been, and far more curious too, which is great.
Do you think there's a way in which the fish market, the commercial fish market, when your buyers go for fish or you go for fish yourself, are in a way a barometer of what's happening in the oceans? I mean, has the fish market changed in the last 10 years as you've been going to get your fish?
Yeah, I think the fish market has changed, and my word, it's changed a heck of a lot since my father and uncle first came to the UK back in the late 50s, early 60s. We're finding, I think, more and more different species and species that you can find in Europe and around the British coast, such as gurnard, for example, horse mackerel and such like, pout or pouting, witch soles as well, megrim soles. So all fish that was kind of deemed second class, or fish that would be used for fish meal or used to put in the crab pots, etc., as bait. Well, actually, they're damn good eating. So you're seeing these now on the menus and in the fish markets, which is wonderful, which is great, because a lot of these fish are 100% sustainable, and cooked properly, they can grace any Michelin star table and do so at Le Gavroche.
Should we just look at the fishing fleet for a moment? There are something like 3 million powered vessels on the world's oceans going out to fish on a regular basis. As we move forward into the 2020s, what do you think will happen to that fleet? How do you see it changing?
We see that these vessels develop, and they have lot of focus on fishing sustainable, what kind of tools they use, how they handle the fish on board, and so on. And also trying to avoid bycatch, unwanted bycatch. So there's a lot of focus on sustainability on these vessels. Now, I can only speak on behalf of the Norwegian vessels, but the Norwegian fishermen invest a lot of money in new capacity, in new vessels. Who are, we have hybrid vessels coming now, so on energy. So there's a lot of focus on this, and the industry takes this very seriously, and they want to deliver a product that's sustainable from catch to table.
Does sustainability come down at the end of the day to management and regulation?
That is an important part of it, because we can't threaten our industry by overfishing. We must remember that all these people that are involved in the catching part of this and also the processing part have this as their main job and income, and in Norway, they are located in small rural villages along the coast, where there are few other workplaces to find. So, and they want to transfer the business to the next generation in a better state than they took over. So this is very high focus on these matters.
Michel, certification is interesting, isn't it? There's a wide range of certificates and guarantees and approvals. Do you put much faith in certification when you go to buy your fish?
Well, I think we have to, but for me, it's really that there are too many. I mean, a quick Google search and you'll find lots of different ones there advocating that you should be maybe avoiding mackerel, and another one will say, well, actually, no, you can eat mackerel, and so on and so forth. So it's not 100% clear, but I do believe that we should follow. Possibly, we should follow them, and we should do our damnedest and our best. Now, some fisheries, such as Scray cod, for example, from Norway, which is an absolutely unbelievable product, but that comes with a tag, with a little metal tag on each fish, and you can trace that fish all the way back to the trawler and the time and place it was caught. So I think that is really quality, and that is something that we as chefs are looking for. But not just Scray cod. There's a couple of fishing ports that also do that with wild sea bass, for example, that come with a tag. It's an assurance, and it's an assurance of quality, but also sustainability, because it's fished in the right way. So I think that is so important, and we have to go by the information that we're given.
Do you buy all of your fish from the marketplace, or do you have an individual relationship sometimes with individual fishermen?
Absolutely, I think it's very important to have that relationship with your suppliers, and not just fishermen. I alluded to that earlier, and there's a couple of fishermen that are day boat fish off the British waters, and they will call me. They'll phone the chef, the kitchen, 10, 11 o'clock at night, and say, look, we're kind of heading back in, and we've got a turbot, we've got a couple of bass in place, whatever, do you want it? And we'll negotiate the price, and that's it, bang, done. Next morning it's on my doorstep. So that that's taking it to the extreme, and not everybody can do that, but it is important to have a relationship with your suppliers. And so I take my staff out to the pig farm that we use in Suffolk, and up in the Lake District we have a guy that does our lamb for us, and it's extraordinary, it's wonderful. But it's respect for the product that you're using, and understanding where it comes from. So you build this relationship with your supplier, and then you can transmit that to the guests, because the guests, as I said earlier, are more knowledgeable than they've ever been, and they want to know now. They really do want to know where their food comes from.
Can I move then away from sea fishing to aquaculture and ask you, if I may, do you use farmed fish?
Absolutely, and I have no problem with that. But not all farmed fish are equal, in the same way as not all fish coming out wild are equal. So again, you must do your homework and do your research and find out about the farmed fish that you're purchasing. But I really have no issue with farmed fish, but it has to be quality and it has to be done properly.
How do you choose?
Yeah, well, the choice is quality of the fish, of the end product, and by that I mean it has to be palatable and good to eat. But then the environmental effect obviously is there too. So, is it damaging the sea, or is it damaging the waters? How is it fed? Is it full of vaccines or what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, antibiotics or such like, to control the lice and all the horrible stuff that happens when you are keeping fish in a very, very close confinement. So, all of that is important, as well as carbon footprint too. So, all of that has a choice. But as I said, I have no issues with aquaculture. Quite on the contrary, I do believe that there is something, that could well be the future.
And Frode, can I ask you that question? Do you think aquaculture is the future going forward?
Yes, and I think we as consumers has a huge potential to increase our seafood in our diets. We eat very little seafood today compared with different meats. So seafood is the solution. Aquaculture will play a very important part here, because it's possible to upscale the production in aquaculture. So and we see in the industry now there's a lot of new innovations coming. We have the traditional pens in the sea that's developed. We have huge offshore farms that Norwegian salmon producers now have started to use, which they take offshore, and then you have different kind of land-based innovation. So we see that the innovation is going very fast in aquaculture, and this can be done very sustainable to give people a healthy and sustainable, secure choice of food.
When I think of aquaculture, I tend to think of salmon. And I tend to think of shrimp, and perhaps in freshwater varieties, maybe trout. Do you see new species coming along as this industry grows and grows? There's much talk about whitefish. Is that something you see on the horizon?
Yes, we see now that several companies in Norway now are on a good way now on farming cod. Which has been difficult because of how the cod lives, but they are succeeding in this now. And we have, for many years, also had the halibut, which gives a very good produce. And with the halibut, and you can farm it to the exact size that the chef wants. Chefs want consistency, and it's possible to deliver the whole year. So we have very good experience with halibut into the UK.
Michel, you alluded to it earlier, and you were saying you were being asked more and more questions by your guests and customers. Are people becoming more knowledgeable? Are they beginning to make their decisions about what to eat on essentially where it came from and how it lived?
I think so. I mean, but we don't want to be killjoys either, and to sort of stop the pleasure of eating out and enjoying our food. But yeah, I think it is becoming more and more important, and the choice of where you buy your food and what you eat. Yeah, I think it is a trend that I'm seeing more and more.
You mentioned earlier on carbon footprint, and I thought it might be quite nice at the end of this to at least nod in the direction of climate change and carbon footprints. One of the things that the British, let's concentrate on the British as I'm British. One of the things that the British are notoriously reluctant to do is to move away from cod and haddock and a couple of other species and just basically turn their noses up at other species. Given that there is going to be new fish on the market and necessarily new fish on the market, do you think we can be educated into eating new fish in new ways, or do you think it's a hard struggle?
Gosh, as I said earlier, I have seen the change already. A lot of restaurants now are serving what would have been considered as bait fish as fish, and it's cooked properly. It's wonderful, absolutely wonderful. But the Brits do seem to have a love affair with cod, and that's been from generations and generations of time. But there's not enough cod around the British waters to feed that huge appetite. Whitefish such as cod and haddock is wonderful deep fried as fish and chips. You can't get away from that. You really can't. There are other whitefish out there that deep fry beautifully too. So it will take time.
I was looking at one of the agencies that govern fish stocks. There was a great encouragement to eat seasonally. Now, I'm not sure that many people do in the modern age eat seasonally. Do you think maybe we should be following the example of our ancestors and sort of eating locally, which by definition would mean eating seasonally? Do you think there's an appetite, metaphorical and real, for that?
It is interesting. I mean, most people don't realize that there are seasons in fish. Seafood, I suppose some people do appreciate that with the R in the month for oysters and such like. But there are times in the year when prawns, for example, little prawns and shrimp are in abundance in British waters. So maybe we should not import as much from Madagascar and such like, and eat a little bit more of ours. But fish also, flatfish and are seasonal. There are times of the year when sole, for example, are not as tasty and meaty as other times of the year. So, and then of course there are shoals of fish that migrate and that move around our waters too. So seasonality is very important, very, very important. And I have seen a change as well. People realizing that strawberries are not meant to be consumed at Christmas time. And make the choice not to purchase them, but they're still readily available in our supermarkets, which enrages me somewhat.
And Frode, as a man engaged professionally in the marketing and the movement of fish at large scale from Norway, would you approve, do you think, of people beginning to eat seasonally and locally, or do you think that aquaculture and the technology that's coming along renders it all a little bit unnecessary?
In my time in the UK, I've had a lot of lovely local caught fish, yes, people should also eat more local produce. But as I said previously, the potential for eating more seafood is so large. Yes, if you add one extra meal a week and eat locally caught fish, I don't mind that. But we must remember that it's a big and large business in the UK to export seafood to other countries, and Britain needs that income. About 75% of British catch is exported to Europe mainly. We are dependent on keeping the world economy going by exchanging different goods between us. And as Michel said, the Brits love cod, haddock, salmon, which we from Norway has a lot of. So I don't think that will change in the near future. But yes, eat also more local fish.